Hello everyone, this is Billy. In this video, I'll show you how to create an FM crystal radio that you can use as a regen radio as well by adding a battery. I also use a 3D printed chassis with a modular design for the 3D printed detector unit. Before we start, please subscribe to my channel Billy C DIY to see all the lovely DIY videos. In this video, I'll first show you the 3D design of the chassis and then how you can make it yourself, all the soldering components, and finally the testing. So this is the 3D model I designed using Fusion 360, a 3D design software. In this design, I have a very small chassis. You can house your variable resistor, variable capacitor, and a small lithium battery inside, CR2032. The modular design is also used for the detector. You can use MOS FET or a diode. To be able to use the regen function, you will need to use a MOS FET called 3DQ. The long name is 3SK-143-Q. I use the same design to house the AM or FM regen radio. So if you download the file, you will get all the design files for AM and FM as well. This is the front panel of the radio. You can see we got the regen button on the left and the tuner on the right, and then the modular detector where you can insert your detector of choice, whether it's a diode, a crystal, or a MOS FET. There's a switch at the bottom labeled C for crystal and R for regen. So if you want to receive a station through the crystal radio circuit, that means without battery, you switch to C. If you want to have more sensitivity, selectivity, you can switch to R to activate the regen function by connecting the circuit to a battery. This is the other side of the front panel. You got mounting holes for the VC, the variable resistor, switch, the modular detector socket, and the antenna screws and the headphone jacks. This is the handle. Optional, if you want to use the handle, you can just print this handle. This is the back of the chassis. It's a box that allows you to have enough space to house all the components and the battery. You can select to mount your antenna on the top holes as well as in the front panel. To allow you to drive in the antenna screws, I created these holes at the bottom. To get the 3D print files for this chassis and all the other radios, you can go to my Patreon site. Just type this URL on your browser, then you will get to my Patreon site. If you join as a basic member, you can download all my 3D files for printing the chassis, plus other stuff I will share on the Patreon site. If you join as a premium member, you will be able to get the source of the design files themselves, so you can modify the design to create your own chassis. Or you can go to the shop and pay a small amount to download just that particular chassis. Get the 3D print files to print your own chassis from your 3D printers. Just click on the product, then you will get to the detail page where you can pay a small amount to download the 3D print files. For example, the zip file of this project has been downloaded. You can unzip it, decompress it to get to the folder. Then you can see each component you can print using this STL file. and the circuit diagram, as well as the instruction for how to create the component. To print a component, just open your favorite slicer software for 3D printing, for example the Cura, and then copy or drag the STL file that you want to print onto that slicer software. Here we're seeing Cura with the front panel being copied in. So you can see this is the front panel. You can examine it, make sure it's aligned without problem. And you can change the printing parameter for your 3D print files. Most common parameter we will change is whether you want to print the supporting material as well, to fill in the gaps between the print panel and your component. So here we click this button to generate the support. And there are different types of support to be generated. We need to make sure it's normal, and you only generate the ones touching the print panel. Then you can slice it and send it to the printer to print. For me, I'm using the Creality K1C 3D printer, so I just drag the file to the slicer screen of that 3D printer software. Again, check that it's all intact, aligned properly, and I'll make sure it is using the profile with support and using the right material. Then I can just slice it. It's the simulation of the printing, starting from the green material, the supporting material, and the top is the red material, the one you want to keep. Once you're okay with everything, you just click the print button to send it to the printer to print. After 3D printing, you can collect the printed parts, use some sandpaper to sand out these unsmooth parts, and then you get what I show here. And I also put in all the components, parts inside the box to make it look like a kit. I want to be able to supply this kit to everyone, but until I figure out the shipping charges, it is still not economically beneficial to ship this across, because the shipment may outweigh the total of all these components and material. Let me show you this material in compartments. This is the variable capacitor. This is the switch. The socket for the CR2032 lithium battery. It's the printed part for the knobs, for the regen level and the variable capacitor. This is the socket for the modular detector that you can put in a diode or a 3DQ. This is the headphone jack. This is the coil again, that will show you how to make it later. And then we have all these M4 screws for mounting the terminals for the antenna. And the same terminal you can also mount a telescopic antenna. This is the filler contact plate for the antenna. This is the mini variable resistor S1K. Some 0.7mm wires for connection. Let's first talk about the circuit diagram. So this is the circuit diagram for the FM radio that we are going to make. On the left, you got two antenna terminals, A1 and A2. You can connect these two to a Yagi FM antenna, which is a very long antenna. Some of us are familiar with those antennas being used as in the television set, right? But this time we are using it for the FM radio. Alternatively, you can also connect a telescopic extensible antenna for radios, 1.2 meter, or also add the drop cable as the second antenna. Then you have the coil. We'll show you how to make the coil using 1mm copper wire. Next, you have the variable capacitor. We are using a plastic variable capacitor, and it's around 22 pF. I'll show you how to tune the trimmer of the capacitor, so you will trim it down to around 22 pF max, which will fit with the coil. And on the further right, you'll see two detectors. The one connected by dotted line is a diode. You can use any diode that works in the FM frequency. I'm using one SS86. There are other detector like a diode or crystal that will work as well. For this type of detector, because it's like a passive detector, you cannot fit in a battery and expect it to do a regen or amplification. So the regen function will not be applicable to these diode or crystal detectors. Alternatively, you can use a MOS FET as a detector. So I'm using 3DQ. It is a nickname for the full name of 3SK-143-Q. So this type of detector, MOS FET, is available from China, or I will give you a link to a eBay shop for a Chinese gentleman in the Western world who can ship you this type of product. The MOS FET will have the regenerative function and some amplification function as well if you put in a 3-volt battery. Further right, we'll see the fixed capacitor, 100 pF. This is to bypass the radio frequency and left behind the audio frequency that will fit to the headphone. Then we got a switch, S1. When the switch is flipped to the upper position, it will connect through a variable resistor to a 3-volt cell battery, CR2032, and then to your headphone. This is the regen function. When the switch is flipped to the bottom, it will bypass that battery. That means it will function like a normal crystal radio. So this radio has two functions. It can be a crystal radio that works without a battery, or a regen amplified radio that uses a battery. If you compare the sensitivity, the regen amplification function will be able to give you 10 times or even more sensitivity and selectivity. You can see on the bottom there's a drawing of the pinout of the 3DQ. There are different types of 3DQ or 3SK143. There's a one called 3EQ. There's another one called 3DP. I will test this out at the last part of the video where I'll do you the testing. This is the data sheet of the 3SK143. You can see on page 2 at the bottom, you see the different ranking, 3DO, 3DP, and 3DQ. So this is how they differentiate the different ranking of the same 3SK143. These are the characteristics of the charts of different parameters of the 3SK143. This is the next one. This is another data sheet of the 3SK144, where 3EQ comes from. You can see at the bottom of page 3 how they differentiate the 3EQ and 3ER based on the current flow capacity. These are some other characteristic charts of the 3SK144. You can download these charts from the internet if you are interested. Just search for the code name. I find that 3DQ and 3EQ performs well in the regen function. But 3DQ performs well both in crystal and regen function, whereas 3EQ performs well only in the regen function. The 3DP doesn't have regen function, it will only work in the crystal function, like a diode. Some of you may have a question, hey, how this circuit is a regenerative circuit? There seems to be no feedback loop. But I can assure you, I tested this, as you can see later on in the testing part of the video, that is really activating a regen function when the switch is flipped upwards. Some of the circuit somehow created a loop that will have the same function of the feedback loop. This radio can also function without an antenna, nor the telescopic antenna. Just using your headphone wire and turn on the regen function, it will give you very sensitive regen radio effects. You can see that when I tested the radio, when my hand is close to the knob, the frequency will change to another one. When I left, the hand is put away, it will shift to another frequency. This is exactly the effect of the regen function. We'll show you later on. For the headphone, you can use a step-down transformer, then connect to a crystal earbud, those piezoelectric earbud, or you can connect to a magnetic earbud with coil directly. Let's start assembling. Let's first mount this variable capacitor using the screws. Then let's mount this variable resistor. This is a 1K variable resistor. It is a short version. Then we'll mount the socket for the detector. You need to trim out this part so it can fit into the hole. I mark pin 1 with red, so it lines up with the label 1. Once you're okay, you can fasten it using the glue. Then we'll mount the switch. So let's see if it still fits. For the antenna, we will use this M4 screw, very short one, and this filler plate for soldering. Let's test if the telescopic antenna can mount firmly to the chassis. So we can extend to 1.2 meter, which is how long you need to get the FM radio to work. This is the variable capacitor. We need to tune the trimmer such that it has the lowest capacitance. This will fit our FM radio with the coil we got. Why 5 turns using this 1mm copper wire on a AAA cell as the frame, then remove the battery. Solder the second turn to the rotating plate of the capacitor and the last turn to the fixed plate of the capacitor. Then you need to connect different points. The second turn connects to the socket for S in the detector, and the third turn connected to the green wire, which goes to the connecting point for the diodes in the socket. Then you will solder up the rest of the cable using very short and thick, close to 1mm cable between the components. So just follow the circuit diagram. I'll fast forward the rest of the soldering work so you won't get too bored. Put in the CR2032 lithium cell battery. It's a 3-volt battery. Then do some testing to make sure we are getting the voltage 3 volts on the switch. Let's take a closer look at the coil. The brown color wire is the grounding of the circuit that also goes to gate 1 of the 3DQ. White wire goes to gate 2, which is the hot end of the coil. Orange wire goes to the S pole of the 3DQ, and the green wire goes to the diode of the socket. For the socket for detector, I use this type of 5-pin socket with these pins that you need to solder to your wire and then insert one by one into each hole of this socket. For the detector, I use these pins, mount the detector on the top whether it's a diode or 3DQ, then cut out this last bit so it can insert into the socket. Just like this one. You can print out the 3D printed modules for the detector you use. Like this one is 3EQ. It's labeled with the Litz as well. So you just push this detector pin into the module, then it will secure firmly. Then you can use it to insert into the radio. For the 3DQ and other MOSFETs, line up the leftmost pin, that means pin 1. For the diode, you need to line up the rightmost pin, that is the last pin called D, small letter D. Again, mount it, push it into the 3D printed socket. I also have this one for the 3DQ. 3DQ performs well in both regen and crystal function. The rest of the video is for the testing. I will not say anything, but just watch the video and hope you can figure out what I'm testing.
係啦，冇錯啦，你講咗阿 Q 精神，就話阿 Q 精神咁樣。咁你如果你要貶義啲嘅諗法咧，你可以話佢係阿 Q 精神，但係實
即係我平時做一部啲就係做呢樣嘢，我身上咁。
咁如果有啲再同宗教冇關係嘅，不過我即係我舉個例子啫，日常生活。
如果要講到，雖然咧嗱，今朝低開2嚿咁滯啊，我嘅任務係將佢發揮到好，倫敦好重要就係將生活照顧。即係可能個品牌出嘅第一個產品喎。喂，可能以往呢個品牌只係會出衫褲鞋襪嘅啫，今次啊呢個系列佢出咗個背囊嘅。
就可以，
咁我就可以吸，我就係問自己有啲咩彩袋咯。唔係真係諗住
係啊，所以頭先我就話你開頭講話，如果人生當中10% 係嗰個件事，90% 你話情緒，我話都唔啱。
係
同嗰個你朋友講，係
轉鄰居，
係啦，
叫 A 大嘅鄰居。
係，唔係我即係講咁耐都係想講咧，其實即係睦鄰係好重要。呢一個即係你尤其是住喺你隔離屋，即係大家係好。
察會否對人員嘅工作有影響，檢討之後再決定未來路。發展土地開展土地調整工作，近日喺多位線公路上開始設置防護牆。
成班係 friend， 我即係
嚟，你啊，
同埋品地啊，係咪？佢哋咧好似互不相識咁，同一個時間段有好多個
規劃處。風雪話規劃處
呢舉行講座，有專家講解中國嘅恐龍同恐龍研究。有關恐龍化石亦都會由聽日起喺探知館向公眾展出。
無限機遇為主題，於10月19號到11月24號喺大灣區9+2活動。香港特區行政長官李家超喺視頻致辭中表示，
大灣區文化藝術節是
僱員可以享有3日育兒假。公務員事務局局長楊何蓓茵話：3日育兒假除咗鼓勵生育，亦平衡咗政府部門運作同埋政府僱員作為家長嘅需要。
商的財務狀況，波音公司當日報告季度虧損超過60億美元。
新星號首度訪港，停泊尖沙咀海運碼頭。郵輪載有大約500名旅客由首。
位居啟德全新發展核心 Peninsula， 簇擁約45公頃繁盛綠意，連綿九龍灣畔與維港雙海岸線，一橋直達九龍東 CBD2， 更享未來智慧綠色集體運輸系統，龐大9000尺臨海。
6.3，一路理財，一路生活，Wealthy Life All the Way。財經台。
新城財經台天氣報告。
天氣預測大致天晴，日間非常乾燥，吹清勁北風。
使用手提電話或者佩戴任何音響裝置嘅耳機。好啦，我哋下一節交通消息再見。
你兩個啊，咁固執啦。係啦，睇下今日嘅題目係咩先？今日主題係揾食啫。哇！幾有態度啊！下一句即刻飆出嚟，翻返。係啊，翻返揾食啫。即刻破地獄啦要呀。係啦。好啦，嗱，呢一個揾食啫咧，即係要有啲辛酸嘅。係啊，有啲難講喎。好快咁哦，佢講好啊，唔緊要啦。咁好啦，咁啊企一陣啦。咁跟住咧，然之後咧就 action 咁啊出去做 NG， 同埋 NG 再翻去啦，係咪？再翻去屋企，咁就 action 再翻去啦。咁啊好嬲！我未試過見一個阿姐嬲到，哎呀唔好意思，頭先我拍嘢。失控啊，其實嗰係失控啊！我話俾你聽，佢失控，我而家講埋俾你聽，個失控恐怖地方係佢舐咗個蓮藕喎！哇！真係佢。佢啊抵俾人行啦，係轉出同轉入，而每一次個轉出都係一樣動作。我都剪嗰啲短頭髮㗎啦，我要啲孔流嘅髮型，跟住啲就係咁講，我係咁話，你同孔流爭。
会上再次强调，乌克兰将议题。刚才这个百分证实乌克兰4%年资源阿里斯对团核心中都跌2%以上，还有百度跌幅也接近2%，快手和哔哩哔哩分好。像建行的话，目前是回升。从蓝筹股份的动向的话，也可以看到目前呢还是有一些的蓝筹股份表现比较好的，尤其是。它的豪赌股的表现像这个金沙就以3.5%的涨幅位居蓝筹的第1位。还有的就是部分的内需股也是相对强势，像李宁涨0.8%到15.4元的水平。最后再回到指数方面，恒指20578点，下跌181点，跌幅0.87%，现入票这一节的沪港一线通。
但係就真係唔容易啊！我都覺得我自己係呢個問題好多年㗎啦，即係經常俾到問題出。
我擔心以前寫字啊、睇書啊各樣嘅，但係而家大家寒背係嚴重咗咧，係因為睇電話，
係
即係你一定係寒住練。
係見底反彈咧，咁個油價。
我覺得啲灣區嘅民主咧係促進咗文化交流同合作㗎。都為粵港澳3地提供咗一個展示各自嘅文化藝術成果嘅平台咧，其實係好有力咁促進咗幾地之間嘅文化交流同合作㗎。咁啊，通過呢啲活動咧，其實係幾個地方嘅藝術家同埋包括我哋嘅普通市民更加深入咁。
哋加油加油加油！我想問下，有冇試過？
啊，你唔會擔即係
我細個好中意抄歌詞㗎。
抄英文歌詞。
中英我都有，日文就冇啦，唔識。日文特別我中意用咩咧？
咁佢哋點㗎？佢哋係
譬如話做觀眾有陣時都有一啲嘅嘢你要諗啊，可唔可以同我哋？
其實冇人，所以揀錯，扣少少分啊！好，到你首歌啦，嚟啦 ，music，
第一回合3分鐘計時開始。
哦，呢個都係我朋友嘅故事。
Thanks for watching till now. This is the end of the video. If you want to support my work, subscribe to my YouTube channel Billy C DIY. Click the bell so I can notify you when the new video is out. Leave a comment and also share it with your friends. You can also join my Patreon site as a member or download any 3D print files by paying a very small amount. Thanks a lot for your support. This is Billy.